Mikhail asked a question earlier, what's the relationship between airlines and airports? In the UK, it's like a marriage. It's based on love and hate. It is a love-hate relationship we have with them. We can't live with them and we can't live without them. And that is the truth. But thank you for inviting me here. Anybody like to have a guess where this airport is? It's my favourite airport in the world. Courchevel in the French Pyrenees. It's famous for three things. Firstly, it's the only airport that is at the end of a ski slope. Secondly, it's one of the shortest commercial runways in the world at about 400 metres. And thirdly, it was used for the opening sequence of the James Bond film Tomorrow Never Dies. And if you've ever landed there, it is great fun. Takeoff is even more fun. What I wanted to do was give you a very quick overview of BMI Baby, which I was involved with starting up and running. Look at some data trends from the European marketplace. Look at the low-cost carrier sector and what you need to start a low-cost carrier and how much of a reality is that for the Russian marketplace, and what components can we still learn given the restrictions that we have in the Russian marketplace from the low-cost carriers. I won't bore you too much with BMI Baby. BMI Baby was launched in 2002. I've worked as commercial director and then as managing director, and we used our parent company, BMI British Midland, to help rapid growth. And we developed what we call in the industry a very hostile challenger brand. We took on our main challengers, which were EasyJet and Ryanair. And we outsourced, we heard this morning a little bit about outsourcing. We outsourced all the key, non-key functions. We did what we did best, which was sell flights and fly airplanes, and we outsourced everything else. Very, very heavy reliance on e-commerce for our sales and distribution. We tried to generate a lot of ancillary revenue as a retailer, and I'll come back to that and how it relates to airports as well. And we grew very quickly. In the 4 years that I was involved with the airline, we grew from nothing to 4 million passengers inside the first 4 years and a turnover of 300 million euros in the fourth year of operation. So very, very quick. And it is very important to grow quickly so your fixed costs are diluted. We all need, we've heard a lot today about growth. And where is this growth going to come from? We all need passengers. Passengers from any shape, form or fashion. We just need passengers. This is a fascinating slide. We've heard some of the routes that Airbus have flown and Transaero, but in 2009 there were over 54,000 routes flown worldwide. Absolutely phenomenal. And when you see it graphically represented like that. I think if we look at just Europe and we take the top 25 European airlines as defined by their passenger numbers. And so you can see in 2000, Ryanair last year flew the largest number of passengers out of any airline in Europe at 76 million passengers. Given where they were in 2006 at 40 million passengers, that's staggering growth over the last 5 years. The second largest carrier, KLM Air France, but if you look at their growth over the past 5 years, it's virtually stagnant. Compare that with Lufthansa, some growth, and then EasyJet, phenomenal growth again. 22 million passenger growth over the last 5 years. Aeroflot came in there at number 12 last year at just over 14 million passengers, and Transaero and UTair are the other two that feature in the top 25. So if we look at the trends from that, we have seen, and I'll go back, you can see if you look at the very bottom, 408 million passengers in 2006, just in the top 25 airlines, up to 607 last year. So we have a growth of 200 million and 50% growth. Despite a recession in Europe, economic stagnation, stroke reduction, and the doubling of fuel price, which in a low-cost carrier typically accounts for around 25% of a total cost base. Two airlines, EasyJet and Ryanair, accounted for 30% of all of that growth. And eight of the top 25 that you can see there are what we'd call a classic low-cost carrier. As I mentioned before, there's good growth in the Russian market, but it's still a long way short of what we can see from the classic low-cost carriers. I think the one exception that is worth noting, and I mentioned it with Dimitri earlier on, is Turkish Airlines, which is the one flag carrier which has got very, very good growth. And that is probably more representative of the Turkish market because Pegasus is also doing very well there. If we now take that data and sort it by increase, here's the next 26 down to 50. And you can see there we've got a few more airlines in there, S7, and a couple of other Russian airlines in there as well. But if you look at the growth down at the very bottom, 73 only up to 84. So the growth is very, very small in actual figures and a percentage figure in those smaller airlines. So most of the growth is in the bigger airlines. Just summarising that, and in the bottom there's a higher percentage of what we would call traditional flag carrier airlines that have pretty much stagnated over the last 5 years. Obviously, we've got some airlines that are not shown in that, that have ceased trading over the last 5 years, including Malev, Spanair, Sky Express, and Avianova. If we rank the top 25, so we've taken the top 25, and then we've ranked it by their increase in variation, so the second from right column, you can see that of the top 8, 6 of the top 8 are all low-cost carriers. The highest actual growth, not percentage, actual growth is in 6 of the top 8 are all low-cost carriers. The only exception are Turkish Airlines, which I've already mentioned, and Lufthansa. So clearly the growth is in that low-cost sector within the European marketplace. So how have the low-cost carriers managed to drive this growth despite rising fuel costs and an economic recession? We need to look at exactly what we mean by a low-cost carrier. Now, if we all wanted to set up a low-cost carrier this afternoon, the classic blueprint is what you see here. In an ideal world, from the setup and operation, a single aircraft fleet, new aircraft, the pilots pay for their own training, you outsource the main cost centres such as ground handling, you hedge your fuel and you hedge your dollars well in advance, you roster your pilots, heaven forbid any pilots in the audience, but you roster them to the maximum legal amount, which in the UK is 900 hours. In the Russian market, 900 hours as well. You roster them to fly as close as you can to 900 hours. No overnight stays, high crew utilisation, 2 crews per plane per day, fast turnarounds, 6 to 8 sectors per aircraft per day, and most importantly, you have to have your staff believing in the model. And that is proved by Southwest Airlines, whose mantra is shared goals, shared knowledge, mutual respect. That is their mantra. And so when they turn that aircraft and the janitor goes on board, he and the pilot know exactly they've got to do a job and they work together. When you look at the routes in the sales process for operation, the commercial side of it, point to point, free market for routes and competition, secondary airports, local marketing support, subsidies, one-way fares, no fare rules, charge for all changes, no overbooking, you don't need to overbook because everybody's paid in advance, single point of sale, direct online, low distribution costs, positive cash flow, yield management solutions, high load factors. You own the passenger. The airline owns the passenger because the booking is direct. That means you can sell them lots of other things before they actually fly. But is it really an either-or situation? Do you have to have all of those to run a low-cost carrier? And if we look at the European marketplace, there are different types of what we call low-cost carriers. The true low-cost startups, the one that sat down with a blank sheet of paper and said, how do we start a low-cost carrier? EasyJet did it, Wizz did it, and Vueling did it. Other ones have evolved from traditional airlines. Ryanair, believe it or not, used to be a traditional airline. Used to fly traditional models, old aircraft, distribute, and fly non-competitively in terms of their utilisation. They changed the way they operated. Air Berlin's changed. Other ones have used the parent umbrella to grow. BMI Baby is a classic example. German Wings under the Lufthansa parent umbrella. And other airlines in Europe have adopted components from that low-cost carrier blueprint. Flybe and Aer Lingus are classic examples. And we used, BMI Baby, for example, we used our parent to help us grow very, very quickly. We had to grow very aggressively because EasyJet and Ryanair were growing, so we used our parent, BMI, for all of our IT, finance, HR, legal, all of those things we outsourced and were recharged at market rate. And it allowed us to grow very, very quickly, 4 million passengers inside 4 years. We adopted most of the low-cost carrier components that we could, especially in the sales, e-commerce and single aircraft fleet. We took the pilots over from our parent airline and put them on new terms and conditions, which was great fun negotiating with the unions. And we looked at ancillary revenue trends as well. Our focus was on sales, stimulating the market, not stealing it, stimulating it, and additional revenue generation. And the whole group, the whole BMI group benefited from having a low-cost subsidiary within the parent group. If we look at this chart, you can see cheap on the left, expensive on the right, restricted service and product down below, and full service up above. Now, let's take these 7 European airlines. Where would we put them on that chart? Well, we could spend quite a long time debating that, but where they really would like to be is there. You see Lufthansa, British Airways, and the Air France KLM really want to be traditional, full-service airlines, sitting right up there in the top right. Turkish Airlines a bit further down. Air Berlin, even though they're classed as a low-cost carrier, really like that mid-market position. EasyJet are now offering more and more benefits for business travellers, slightly different fare classes as well. And Ryanair, well, Ryanair are way, way down, possibly right down there off the screen. As far bottom left as you can possibly go is where Ryanair want to be. So we've got really not a split. We haven't got this low-cost carrier bottom, traditional carrier top right. What we've got is a transition. And therefore we have to stop thinking of this mentality in the Russian marketplace of it's got to be either or. Some of the Russian carriers that are currently in existence need to look at the low-cost carrier blueprint and say, what can we integrate that will help us either cut our costs or generate revenue? So here we've got 6 Russian carriers. For a minute, where do you think they should be? Now, I've got to leave Russia later on tomorrow, so I haven't dared put those on that map, okay? You can do that in your own head. I want to get out of here alive. Okay, but clearly, I think that some of those carriers will be reflected in similar positions on there. Maybe bottom left-hand side, there isn't, and there's an opportunity there. But what I'm saying to you is, what components can each of these airlines? So, the key objective of any airline is to have higher revenue, total revenue, lower costs, growth, and greater profitability. And it's not what I would say to the Russian. It would be easy. It would be very easy for me to stand here and say, here's your blueprint, sort it out. Get some secondary airports. Don't charge when you bring aircraft in that carry more than 180 people. Rip up all the rules and start again. But that isn't going to happen, not in the short term. So what can you learn from the low-cost carriers that you can immediately integrate? And what I want to do is concentrate on 2 or 3 from this bottom right-hand side list that I've had a quick look at and researched in the Russian marketplace that I think you can radically change and generate specifically more revenue and save some costs very quickly. One of the things that low-cost carriers are famous for is simplifying the whole fares process. Ryanair have one-way point-to-point fares, no return fares, one way, one class, very simple fare rules. You buy it, you fly. That's it. If you want to change it, you pay. That's all it is. And we'll take your money off you there and then. If you don't fly, that's your loss. And you can see that very simply reflected there. If we take an example from Aeroflot, this is a screen dump. You can see, let's have a look at the data flight. So this is, I did this last week for obviously yesterday's flight. And you can see we have a range of flight prices there. I do like the word freeze. I think that's an interesting fare class given the climate here in Moscow at the moment. And here are the fare rules. Very, very complicated. Very similar to the way traditional airlines used to work in the United Kingdom and Europe. And most of them have now changed to a simple point-to-point fare structure. Yield management. Low-cost carriers now in Europe typically sell over 95% of all their seats online. Now, I spoke with Dimitri over coffee earlier on, and Avianova was up around in the 90s as well, Dimitri? Yeah, in the 90s. I don't know how common this is, but Aeroflot is 20, 22, a bit higher, 30, 40. But anyway, it's lower, significantly lower. But they sell it directly online, and that really, really reduces your cost. For an example, if you sell via traditional mechanism, a €100 fare will typically eat up 15 euros of distribution costs through the system, 15 euros. If you sell it direct online, it's around 0.2 of a euro. So that's straight profit, straight to the bottom line, and changes the system complexity as well. The other benefit of selling direct online is everything is in one place. No distribution to GDS systems. You own the customer. They're yours from the minute they take the booking. You own the cash. You don't have to invoice GDS systems or travel companies. It's there, sat in your bank. Much lower cost of sale, as I've already mentioned. You don't need to overbook because they've already paid. You don't need to guess how many people are not going to turn up. You can understand revenue per flight, and your yield management system can be so much simpler. And this is a classic. For one flight, this is how simple yield management is. You're on sale, bottom left. You fly the thing, bottom right. So you've got time along the axis on the bottom. Your load factor there. And all you do is have different fare buckets. Some at 10 euros, 20, 30, 40, all the way up. And so what you would get, and this system is designed to automatically correct itself. So let's have a look at these booking trends. You put a flight on sale online, and all of a sudden, you've not picked up that, I don't know, Moscow Spartak are playing Manchester United in the Champions League that night. So everybody goes online, and everything, all the prices go up through the roof. And you can see the green curve there automatically corrects itself very, very quickly. So there's a small number of fares that are on sale at 10 euros, but before you know it, you've only sold 5 or 10%, you're already up to 100 euro fares. Another example, if you take the blue line on the bottom, you stagnate. So you get up into the 20 euro bucket and you stagnate. And if you don't sell anything, it auto corrects itself and drops you back down into the 10 euro bucket. But the other thing to notice is you have cut-off points here. So regardless of if you've sold out of that bucket, your 10 euro fares go offline at a certain point, and then your 20 euro, 30 euro, 40 euro. So you never leave those low fares out there. And this one slide is how all fares are managed, very, very simply. Here's a classic example. Here's a Ryanair flight. I did this screen dump on Friday of last week. And this is for a flight from London to Dublin for June. And you can see the price, all inclusive, including fares, of 16 GBP. That's about 20, 21 euros for the flight. So this is in that bottom bucket. And they're all over the place, Ryanair flights, if you book them a long way out. Here's a flight from London Stansted to Dublin, going out last week, the day after I did this screen dump. Look at that. That's about 320 euros. And they're a low-cost carrier? People forget that. You try and book a Ryanair flight for any time this week, and you won't get it for less than 200 euros. Why? Because regardless of how many seats they've sold out, they have this closeout mechanism built in. And it's very simple. Very, very simple to run. Let's have a look at some Russian competitors. UTair. I'm looking at a flight here, which I think, the 6th, 4th of the 6th to the 4th of June. Very expensive fares for a long way out. No promotional fares out there. Now, that's a very high fare to have for a flight that's not operating for a long time. Here's Aeroflot. So this is last week for a flight for this week. And you can still see we've got very cheap fares that are available. So we still have that freeze fare in there of 68 euros. Now in the Ryanair model, there's no way there would be cheap fares out there for a short travel window. No way. Because if you want to book this late, you have to travel. There's a reason why you've got to travel. It might be business, it might be personal. But if you're booking this late, you have to travel. And unfortunately, you're going to have to pay. That's what Ryanair say. And so, while you're charging high fares early on, you're losing the incremental stimulus bookings. And while you're charging cheap fares late on, you're losing your high yield passengers. Here's S7 as well, and apologies if there are any representatives from these airlines in here. But again, late in the profile, very late in the profile, so this is a flight last week that I looked at for last week, you can still see they're offering promotional fares for virtually the day after. That would never happen in a true low-cost carrier because there's no need to stimulate demand at that time. You're diluting your yield. So the advertising message that Ryanair use are low fares, and the low fares are out there. If you book early, give me your money early. Give it to me. I'll look after it very safe. Don't wait. The longer you wait, the price is only going to go one way. You will not get cheap fares if you leave it till the last minute. The load factor, over 95% on Ryanair flights because of the yield management structure. The ability to charge very high fares late in the profile for those that have to travel. Higher overall revenue and contribution per flight. You can do the maths on the back of an envelope. You do the maths, more passengers, slightly lower net yield, you win. And obviously you've got greater potential, more passengers for ancillary revenue. And remember, ancillary revenue now is about the flight, the changes, the insurance, parking, baggage, seat, onboard, car hire, hotel, anything you want. Ryanair now make over 25% of their total turnover through nothing to do with the flight. They are not an airline anymore, they are a retailer. And then we come on to marketing tactics online. Look at all of these. This is an EasyJet screen dump. Look at all of these marketing tactics. Say the words you see all over the place. Save, lowest fare. Look at that on the right-hand side of the screen. Hurry, only 2 left under £41. So the system even interprets how many are left and tries to give you a really strong, what we call, marketers call, a call to action. Do it now, or somebody else will do it. Very, very strong. The other one I wanted to touch on was ancillary revenue opportunity, and this applies to airports as well. I speak at a lot of airport events as well, and try and say, look, the low-cost carriers have got ahead of you. They now own the passenger from the minute the booking is made. They can talk to them, they can sell them things, they can upgrade. Airports don't do that. Airports don't know when they look after the passenger. When do the passenger become theirs? When can they start selling? When can they look at their overall ancillary revenue? And there was a question asked this morning about how do you run an airport aside from the capital infrastructure investment? And that's a very important question. You need to get retailers running the airports that understand how passengers, how customers move through systems, how you sell them things. And let's have a look at a classic example. This is an airline website. Okay? Have you ever seen such a disgraceful example of an airline website in your life? How many point of sale items can you see there? Forget the calendar on the left. How many point of sale and call to actions can you see there? Let's just look just below the Ryanair logo. Car hire, travel insurance, hotels, airport transfer, credit card, gift vouchers, hostels, bed and breakfast, cruise holidays, SIM cards, villas, apartments. They are a retailer, and they are using their brand to that effect. 72 million passengers last year booked through that website. 72 million. I don't know if we have any e-commerce experts in the room or any retailers, but how many of you would like 72 million people through footfall through your shop floor? Some airports are starting to realise this. Liverpool John Lennon Airport is a classic example. They are now trying to get to the passenger a lot earlier. There are 8 call to actions, messages designed to get you to buy in there. So we've got, if we look down the left-hand side, we've got car parking, executive lounge, fast track. They charge to fast track you through the airports. And then we've got various other things on there. Car parking again on the right-hand side and pushing flights with Ryanair. So they are starting to realise this, and it has had a massive effect on their overall ancillary spend by the passenger. And the highest one we've got in the UK is actually, not surprisingly, London Heathrow, that has around 35 euros per passenger of ancillary spend as they transition through the airport, 35 euros. Talking about other sectors as well, some other examples. This isn't anything to do with aviation, but it's order now and save £3. The order now doesn't say expires in a day, 2 days, a week. You don't know. You have to go for it right there and then because you don't know. Always new on a Wednesdays up on the top left, so you know to go back to the website every Wednesdays. All techniques that are now being used by airlines. Here's an even better one that is so applicable to the Russian marketplace. Really apologies for showing a map of the United States. I was fortunate enough to spend 10 years living and working in a place called Myrtle Beach in South Carolina, just to the left of where the H is for the high pressure. And it's a beautiful place. So I hope that's okay for you. I do hope you don't think I've been talking a load of rubbish. But I am around as well. Dimitri and myself are doing a Q&A low-cost carrier debate later on this afternoon, looking at some of these, what is realistic, what isn't realistic, and Dimitri has some data as well from his experience with Avianova. So hopefully that was of use, and I will just show you that end up with the data because data doesn't lie. Thank you very much.